Hey, how you doing?
Happy to be here.
First official podcast. Yay. For everybody watching, this is my girlfriend, Maria. You have anything to say to them?
No.
Okay. So we're going to be talking a little bit about SES, which is social economical status. What do you think that is?
As a college student, hearing a bunch of terms every day, I would think it's like the status of your income or the money that you make, like hence the social part, meaning people or society. So I would guess it's family income or something like that.
That's actually a good go at it. It's close. So SES, or social economical status, is like you said, kind of the income that you get, but it's more of like where you live, what you're surrounded with, stuff like that. So if you live in like a bad neighborhood or something, so it all, like, three main factors that I kind of went into on my essay that I am writing about this topic. I went into the culture dealing with attachment on a level with a child or something like that. Then I also talked about some about their life, and so
You mentioned discipline. What does that have to do with socioeconomic status?
that has an effect on motor development and kids developing. So with SES, when I say discipline, I'm trying to figure out the understanding and whether or not it has an effect on.
So you mean like the discipline? So you mean the discipline given by the parents based on, I guess, their surroundings or the type of people that would live in a certain area? What would that be like on their motor development? Okay.
Two sources that I ended up using was the neuroscience of SES, correlation, cause, and consequences. That's by MJ Fair. It talks a variety of different things, like the different effects that kind of like the title states, like different effects, different measurements that go through within the whole process, and like the consequences. So the consequences, what I would say is kind of like the outcome of the child and whether their motor development is developed throughout their ages and all that. What is your opinion on the child development and how it can be affected by SES, or social economic status?
So I'm actually very passionate about neurology. I'm not gonna pursue it because I don't have the income for that, because I might as well have been affected by SES as well growing up. So I actually know a good bit about this just because at the moment taking ethnicity in the United States with a sociology course. So it's like right here in this term in this theme of information. So basically I can attest to the fact that SES really does have motor development effects. Close to here, Baltimore, Maryland. Okay, when we think about Baltimore, Maryland, if you guys didn't know, Baltimore, Maryland has one of the poorest school systems in Maryland, and if you go to the like elementary schools or even the high schools, they don't get enough funding. They don't get and mostly those schools are populated by minorities, meaning African Americans and Hispanic, Latinos, etc. Mostly, I believe this might be around the percentage might be around 97% African Americans and the rest any other minority. But what I'm trying to get at is that in Baltimore, there's a lot of like redlining when it comes, and this is kind of political, but redlining means like whenever a certain group of people is forced or kind of condemned to just be able to live there. Because if you guys also didn't know, and I don't mean to get racial or anything, but it has a lot to do with minorities, because we're not going to address something like SES without talking about minorities, because most of the time those are the type of people that are affected. So basically, redlining is the fact that African Americans are only able to get apartments in a certain area of Baltimore and not, say, other areas, better areas. And the reason why this is because real estate agents are still allowed to say that if you don't have a certain thing, a certain document, a certain income, you can't get this apartment. So imagine African Americans are a minority, and they're not a model minority, so they're already disadvantaged to incomes, jobs, good jobs that could get you in a neighborhood that's good. So most of the time, African American families are condemned to stay in a certain part of Baltimore that is not good. Also, I read an article, I think you read it with me too, the schools systems by, so in that article that they were talking about like kindergarten and pre-kindergarten things, studies and all that they conducted, that most most low-income families, usually African American families, but not always, their kids don't have pre-education, meaning preschool. They don't get to have those 4 years in advance to other kids that may have it. So they are at a disadvantage. You're 4 years old and you're at home probably watching TV and not doing much of anything. Your parents work all the time. You're kind of just watching your tablet or doing something like that as a 4-year-old, whereas another 4-year-old in another neighborhood is going to school, going to a prestigious daycare, going to a mini little private institution for 4-year-olds because they can, because their parents did that, and your parents can barely afford to pay the bills. You don't know that yet because you're 4, but it's gonna bite you later in your life, because all of a sudden you're 6, right? You're 5, 6? You already understand the concepts more, right? You're 6. At 6 years old, you understand a little bit of what's going on. And you're 6 and you're finally in kindergarten. Why is that kid, why is my friend better than me at this? I feel dumb. You're not dumb. It's just because of the SES that you're surrounded with, right? The socioeconomic status that your family is in compared to that friend of yours that lived in a neighborhood way far away from yours, right? And now you feel weird as a kid. You feel like it's you're dumb, right? Like, why don't I know as much as this person? I must be dumb. But you're not.
As I said, research was done and to define what SES was and how it can be affected, and as in the first article I had stated, it said that income levels and educational levels is one of the main impacts that has a impact on a kid's motor development. You know what I mean? So it's kind of hard for a kid to, like you were talking about minorities and all that stuff, to understand that a lot of minorities have a hard time getting jobs and all that because there's like a 65% rate for a person that is a minority has a less chance of getting a job than an actual white person does. And it's very effective on the kids and the kids surrounding them and that whole development. And so the article kind of goes into touch with understanding that with kids motor development they need different things like toys and stuff like that to be able to develop just genuinely and be able to be at the same pace as another kid that is on the same level as them. So basically Q Chen and Y Kong, they kind of went into description of all children development uniquely through their lives by SES, as you spoke about. And then they went into stating ranging from a young age to teens, leaning more into children's life situations, the questions that they were asking and that we also wanted to ask was, what impact did that have and what can it affect in their future, a kid's development in their future, and how can that be very detrimental to them. And then we went into touch about parenting and whether the parenting style could either very positively change or very negatively change the whole outline of the child growing up.
I actually want to say something before you move on to that, because parenting I feel like has a lot to do with it. I might have a question toward the end.
Yeah.
I'll mention it now and then we can. Basically, my question was like, because I feel like people are gonna think that we're going about this in a racial spectacle, but I wanna say that I don't think so. Like, yes, there is a racial spectacle to it, but I also want to shine light to the fact that, like, you're white, you're white, I'm Hispanic, and we were raised in different homes, but we're not that different. And he can explain that to you guys later. But what I was trying to say about parenting styles is my parents, like, yes, I'm an immigrant. Yes, like, coming to the United States for me meant more opportunities, more. And when I was in Guatemala, where I'm from, like, education was different. It's not equivalent to the education here in the United States. The United States education is much more vigorous than the one in yes, maybe, because I was learning other languages in kindergarten. I don't know about you guys, but I was. In Guatemala, I was. But in the U.S. Standpoint, let me put it into perspective in the future. For example, my uncle graduated university in Guatemala. He was a doctor for special education kids. However, when we came to the United States, all of that was gone. All of his education in Guatemala meant nothing. And why did it mean nothing? Because of the language barrier. So he was a big shot doctor in Guatemala, and in the US, he was nothing. And he became a Tyson manufacturer worker, and that's what he's been ever since. And it's really sad, but that's how education is perceived from different countries. Now what I'm trying to say is, ever since I was little, ever since I came to the US, big opportunity, big shot for an immigrant person to come to the US, and that's what immigrants have in their mind. US opportunities, that's it. And then my parents would always tell me, my mom, not my parents, my mom, my uncle, most of my mom, she'd always be like, you have to work hard. Like, you have to work hard always. Like, always study. I don't know about any other person that might be an immigrant that's listening to me right now, but if you have parents like mine, you probably got told these things constantly. Like, like, don't get out of school. Whatever you do, don't leave school. Don't get pregnant. Don't let distractions get to you. Go to college, go to school, study, graduate, do all of that. And that for me, for some people, it doesn't work. But for me, it did. I mean, college, almost done college, almost a senior in college, and I never thought I'd be here. But this is one of the things, like, parenting has a lot to do with. My mother never once stopped reminding me, you need to study. She would always use herself as an example. I was like, do you want to end up like me? It sounds bad, but for Hispanic kids, a lot of Hispanic kids don't want to end up working their entire life. That makes sense. Like, yes, they're gonna work in something, but it's like, go to school, do something, get opportunities. And I mean, I ended up getting an opportunity to go to Barcelona. I did go to Barcelona, but going to Spain, that's something that, as an immigrant and as a Hispanic person from a medium income family, never once in my life did I ever think I'd have that opportunity. And because of college, I did. So, you see, parenting has a lot to do with it. If your parents aren't constantly on your butt telling you do something with yourself, most likely your motor development is not going to develop. You're going to be thinking, I'm not going to really amount to much, right? I can't do it because your parents aren't telling you, right?
You came here and your mother was very like persistent with you, consisting school, but not all parents that have immigrated. I've met people that hasn't totally like pushed their child and be like, hey, go to school, literally like that. Fam MJ, which is the author of the one article that I was reading about, was she actually stated all societies have worse offs and better offs individuals, with those who are better off having more material resources and also non-material resources, including education, occupational prestige, and neighborhood quality. So I don't really know how your neighborhood quality was, but like it seems to me that your parents was very persistent with you going to education or stuff, and like persisting education. I understand, like you said, your uncle was a doctor and he did education in Guatemala, where you're from. But when he came here, it wasn't very leveled out, and that's a big part about a child's motor development.
The equivalency of education from Guatemala may be good enough for you to be a doctor or something, but when you come here, whatever you did in Guatemala is not good enough to be a doctor in the United States. Like, course material wise. And like, if let's say, and it was, yes, he didn't choose to go to school. You can choose to go to school. If you have that type of career, you could choose to go to school and try to like redo your studies to equivalent to the US studies. But there was a language barrier. He wasn't gonna go and learn English, which was already hard enough for him, just so he could have the same thing. Also, doctors in the US have a lot of studying to do, and it's very expensive, even for a person that's been born and raised here, is probably, even then, it's still hard.
More talking about the parenting, as we were different types and different styles, and main factors that contribute to a kid's motor development through the parenting is the parents' educational level as well as the kids' educational level. Like I stated prior, family income, how much money you get, whether that parent can afford different toys.
I'll ask you a question. What was your impact? Like how did your SES impact you? Because I feel like it's important to, put in those personal income, connect to your research. So what is it? What was yours like?
As a white person, a lot of speculation happens that white people, not all white people, but a lot of the time white people have the better lifestyle and stuff. And in some cases that's true, but I think in my case it wasn't really. My family,
in some aspects, I guess it's true.
Yeah, in some aspects it's
not
true,
fully.
but it's in my case it's not, because my parents wasn't very rich. They had worked their whole life. Both my parents was very young. My dad was 19, my mom was 17, 18. I think she turned 18 when she had my older sister. And then 2 years later, they had my middle sister, which was Jess. And then they had me, which was 2 years later. So they had us for like a span of 6 years. And it's very impactful for them to, to have to, constantly work to support for 3 children. And it kind of like on a side note, a little rant, it kind of wild to me because my older sister, she actually copied my mom and dad. And that's kind of like weird to me because she saw my mom and dad do it in like a 6-year span, and that happened to her. Like she had my oldest niece when she was like 18, 19, and then 2 years later she had my middlest niece, which is and then exactly. And I don't know if that's generational trauma or something like that, like you said, but it's kind of weird. A lot of kind of like I had siblings to look up at. I wasn't the as a child. I don't think I developed as quick as what I feel like I could have, but I lacked some informational skills, I feel like, when it comes to that. But my parents did everything. They worked constantly, and they taught us as kids to constantly work, to be working as hard as you can, because you gotta, someday you're gonna have to, work for your family. You're gonna have to support for your family. You're gonna have to, especially me, as, I was the only boy, work as a man, kind of doing that. And they never gave us things for free. Like right now I'm going to college, but I'm gonna have to pay for that myself. And I'm on that level that I wouldn't even, there was a point in my life where my parents sat us down and was like, my mom ended up losing her job, and then it was one of the most memorable moments as a child, being in that living room and understanding that, well, my dad saying that things are gonna just stop. Things are gonna have to cut down, We're not gonna be going out as much. We're gonna be eating at home. We're gonna be doing things less and less because we're running out of money. And it was a big impact on me because knowing that I just couldn't do anything as a child, I wanted to support because my family taught me to try to support my family and try to support everything I can. But in genuinely affecting on my motor skills and that whole SES and everything comes into play. And I went to a good public school. I didn't go to a private school. I have a lot of friends that are not white, and they actually went to private schools. They actually went to different public schools that was more you had to wear different clothing, and it was very strict. But I went to a regular public school in the middle of nowhere. It was kind of like we're surrounded by
It
fields
just
and all
comes
that.
to show that it's not, sometimes it's not about race.
Yeah,
It's about your parents.
exactly.
Kind of.
And kind of like where your parents grew up.
Where
and
your
like stuff like
parents
that.
grew up, like how they're raising you.
Mhm.
And what they kind of want for you, because they kind of choose your development in a way.
Yeah, no, and it's a big thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, to wrap it off, do you have anything else to say?
No, not really. I think
Okay.
I've spoken enough.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on my podcast.
Pleasure.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah.
Talk about my motor development and what kind of affects them, and does SES affects them. To sum it up, I would honestly say yes. Different people live in different lives, and to understand that people are going to have different paths, and the way someone develops is just a big understanding. And you can look at it as whether a child that in a poor neighborhood will develop less than someone in a rich neighborhood, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's depending on the parents and what the parents do, and whether the parents or culture, or we didn't really touch much into culture, but whether parents or culture kind of goes into the understanding and whole surrounding of the effects on the child. But I would say thank you for watching, and peace.